This is Ramanan Ganesan. I'll be covering the masterclass on best practices for effective resume writing. This is brought to all of you from IPL Career Management Cell. Before I proceed, can we get a quick few folks saying, yes, I can hear me? Can you all hear me? You can. Yes, if you can hear me, or say, yes, you can hear me.
Yes, Ramanan, I can hear you. Abhishek, yeah, we can hear. We can hear you, Abhishek.
Yeah, we can hear.
Good evening. So today I'll be covering the masterclass on best practices for effective resume writing. Before I start, let me set the context for why we are doing this masterclass. We have the next IPL Career Day coming up on April 15th, and we wanted to make sure that all of you have the resume written. And as we are preparing the database and planning the Career Day activities, we wanted to make sure that we are able to share the best practices on effective resume writing. Because if you really look at the context, often when you think about resume, when you're looking for a job search, and usually the context is it's always sent to a person that you don't know most of the times. And that is the context. Sometimes obviously you send it to the folks that you know, but many times it happens that you're sending a resume, and often the situation we run into is that we don't hear from the recruiter or hiring manager, and often we have to wonder what is that happening. And so demystify this. We wanted to understand what people really look for in a resume. And quick disclaimer, I'm not any career planning expert or career coaching expert, but I have looked into the internet and looked at the best practices in bringing you this masterclass on best practices for this. So we will share the best practices and take your questions, and some of you may have more best practices, so it could be an interactive discussion here. Okay. So quickly set the goal I outlined, that we want to make sure that we share the best practices, and what we are going to cover today is 6 elements. We will talk about what is a resume and who is it for and why it is needed. So let's get the big picture behind what is a resume, and we will talk about what do you essentially need to have in a resume, essential elements, what people really look for. And then we will go over some of the best practices and with examples wherever needed. And I'll also cover some things that we want to avoid in a resume. So we have some details to cover that. And I will end the masterclass with some good templates and some useful resources that you can leverage after the masterclass. In terms of what you want to take away from this, here is the objective from a learning outcome standpoint. At the end of the masterclass, I think one of the key outcomes should be that everyone should know what you should be thinking when you're writing a resume. I mean, that's a very important piece that you will get to know. And what should I really write and what should I really leave out in terms of a content, and some do's and don'ts you should be able to remember or refer. And how do you get started to write a good resume? So if you can be enabled, these are the outcomes that we expect after the masterclass for you. Okay, so let's talk about what is a resume and who is it for and why it is needed. And as I said, you often think about a resume when you're in a job search, or you want to send to persons that you are not familiar with, they don't know you, and you're applying for a job or sending it to folks that you want to get connected, right? And the important thing is often we are, traditionally, how the resume is fundamentally, you think about, writing a summary, all your accomplishments, experience, and education, etc. But we almost look at it like a more factual document, trying to do that, right? But really what a resume is it's simply, you have to look at it like it's a 30-second commercial about you. And I'll explain, some of the reasons behind that. And it is simply a personal branding document. It is beyond stating, your accomplishments, experience, education. You have to look at it like a marketing document that talks about the unique selling proposition about you. What that means is, here is what I have done, here is what I can bring to the job, and why, and here is what my education is, and why there are hundreds of people applying to the job, or why you should be considered differently. So think of it like, all of you know about product marketing as a product professionals, but we all know about what does it mean branding a product or a company. But here, this exercise is all about how to brand yourself. So the thinking really required is that you have to look at putting together a story, and I'll go into the details of what the story needs to have. And the resume audience is, most cases, the audience for your resume that you need to think it's a recruiter or the hiring manager is the person that you're looking for. And everyone else will be consuming it, but the primary audience is recruiter, hiring manager. That's the person that you're targeting when you're writing a resume or when you're addressing it, right? And the simple thing to understand is that the purpose of the resume is to really get a phone call. Everybody can hear me? They seem to be getting some muting by the organizer. Rajit, can somebody say yes? Can anybody hear me?
No, we can hear you. We can hear.
Okay. So I was trying to go over, why a resume. The only purpose of the resume that you should think is that, it's the main job is to, it's when you may be applying for a job, sending a resume. It is not to get you the job. The important goal of the resume is to make sure that you get a phone call for an interview. Therefore, you get a chance to represent yourself when you go for the interview with the hiring manager. So that is really the purpose. So anything that you write must to make sure this goal is achieved. So that's why we will talk about, why this goal, and how you write it will become clear. So quickly summarize, the resume is nothing but a 30-second commercial. It's a marketing document addressed primarily to the recruiter, hiring manager. The only goal, the success of the resume is that when you send to somebody that you don't know, you must get a phone call for an interview. It could be a recruiter or a hiring manager, whoever is first receiving the resume. And if you really look at what you really have in the resume, I talked about the unique selling proposition. Everybody is applying. How do you distinguish yourself, stand out? And the story needs to really resonate, right? And the important fact to understand is that, and this is very true, and sometimes we don't know this, but the average time your resume is read by a recruiter hiring manager is only 7 seconds during the initial screening. It is only 7 seconds on an average, and that is a fact. So that means, what do they look for in those 7 seconds is what matters, whether your resume is whether they're going to read the rest of the resume or not, or whether they're going to make a phone call. And that 7 seconds, how do you make sure that you get the attention? And typically, you know that these days, every job gets hundreds and thousands of applications. So if you look at it from a recruiter standpoint, they only have very finite time they give it to a resume before they go to a next one. So in that first pass, 7 seconds, how can you get the attention? And what do they look for? And that's the thinking you need when we want to write the resume, right? And what do they look for in those 7 seconds? Typically when first obviously they read the name and they go look at what is the education, where are you from? And they look at what the immediate job, where are you working now, for how long? And what have you done in the last couple of jobs, prior jobs? Quickly they look at the prior job and the duration. And they look for, more importantly, what are some high-catching results that you have accomplished. The whole thing is done in 7 seconds. In that, and I'll talk about, why a resume needs to be a one-pager, because this is the primary reason, one of the reasons, right? You have to make sure that you hit these points so that you catch the attention. And the 5 things they look for in a resume, and they have to address these 5 questions and think of it like a story that you're presenting, and that the entire resume needs to address these 5 simple questions. What can you do? The skills that you bring to the table. And what have you done? Experiences that demonstrates that you have got the skills. And who you are, what are the traits that you've demonstrated during these experiences. And why you would succeed for the job that you're applying for. And how have you created impact through those experiences. And I will go through, specific template, or, when I go over the best practice, we'll understand that. But fundamentally, think of it like it is not a laundry list of accomplishments or, job responsibilities. It is primarily the resume needs to convey a simple story about answering these 5 questions. For example, a simple narrative could look like this. For example, a sales manager who is trying to showcase his business development skills, and he's applying for a job that leverages this skill, right? Here is how his story a narrative will write it. Like, instead of saying, he could say that I have done business development for 2 years, and I've grown in my current sales territory, sales projections. He can write in a very simple sentence, but the real narrative should look like this. So here is a good example. Having grown my sales territory by 42% in last 2 years. So the important word to note out is that the metric. And I have developed a systematic business development approach that works, and that can affect your bottom line in a matter of months. So instead of just saying that, I've developed a systematic business development, now you're relating to you're speaking to the recruiter or the hiring manager and how this skill is leveraged. Are you with me so far? So, so this is a simple example to illustrate that how a narrative needs to be constructed for every skill or experience that you bring. And I'll show more examples as we move along. Right? So here let's just start with the, going over some of the best practices here, to set the narrative going, right? First thing to note is that normally we see, a resume going for multiple pages, but I think the important thing to note is that make sure you make the resume one page as much as possible. There is no reason to go, at most it can go to 2-pager for people with more than 6 years experience, sometimes, but generally try to make that, because as they only have 7 seconds in the first scan, and then the entire 30 seconds is the only thing that they go through the entire resume. Within that, so anything beyond the 1-pager never gets read. So that's the first thing to, when you're trying to write the content, your goal should be that it must fit within a page. A maximum it can be in 2-page. And if it is not on the first page, you have to assume that they don't get read, because the full pass only takes 30 seconds. So that's the very first rule of the resume. The second most important, and you will have to literally take this, that therefore every word that is used in the resume must earn its place in the resume. That means if the word must make a difference to your story that you're trying to convey. And if any, so you can literally, use a chopping block to remove any word that doesn't need to be there. So literally that means that as you keep doing, you will keep on editing till, you make sure that every word is required to be there. Without that, your story is missing. So if you can, only then you should include the word in that. If it's not going to make a material difference, and you will see some of the examples of, what you include in the resume, what you don't include, so that will help you. But these are the first thing you need to get the thinking set when you're trying to write the resume. And as I said, this needs to be a narrative, and it should not be a set of boring facts. For example, and I'll give some example when we talk about, I went to this college, I studied at XYZ, or I created this web page, or I developed this product. A lot of it is, and sometimes we say I'm a result-oriented person, I'm a self-starter. There are a lot of things people look at it and say, these are all very boring things. You have to really make it, what does it mean to the hiring manager or the recruiter looking for the job? So somewhere you have to make the connection, and I'll talk about when we define the, summary, how you write the experiences. So avoid putting any boring facts. Ask the question, so what, after you write every sentence. So if it don't find the connection, rewrite. Once you get the broader outline, okay, it has to be a 1-page. I'm going to make sure that every word earns its place, and it's something that has to be, consumed in 7-second scan or detected or 30 seconds. Now you look at, what type of resume that I want to have. Traditionally, there are 2 kinds of resumes, people see. One is you write the resume in a reverse chronological work experience. Start with your latest job and then start describing it. There's another type of resume called functional resume, where we just focus on skills and describe what have you accomplished to demonstrate the skill. And typically, given that all of you are working professional with the experience, you don't want to just write a traditional resume or the functional resume, write a combination resume. So I'll quickly go over an example of what our resume could look like. Can everybody see what I'm showing?
Yes.
Okay. So here is a simple resume that, here I want you to point out, I will go over the summary, and the professional skills section little down, but here you focus on, some of how the experience is defined. So you read the thing like, here is a marketing manager, look at the increased revenue by 40% by analyzing sales data, promoting products with a high rate of repeat purchase, eliminating high cost and items.
Skills.
Say marketing specialist, causing sales and growth to increase, maintaining high employee retention rate. So simple, and if you really look at it. So somebody is talking in the background. So here is a simple one-page resume. You can see that, it is formatted nicely and it has got bullets and clearly highlights what the experience is and the skills. And skills I'll talk about a little bit. We need to elaborate a little bit. But fundamentally, these are the important sections one they need to look for. And it clearly, and talk about metrics, there's very simple narrative here, right? And why is it a combination resume? This is basically, you talk about the skills and also work experience. You write in the reverse chronological order. And I'll give you another example. Here is another example of, a summary profile, key skills, a professional experience and education, another one-pager profile. Looks neat, compact, people can read out. And so this is another example of a combinatory resume. And I have later templates and I'll cover that. But fundamentally, key thing to note is that you write the summary section at the top and then the skills with the covering top accomplishments, and then the professional experience and where you describe, what you have accomplished with the clear metrics, and then education. And then you can include some awards or certification that you have done to illustrate some credibility markers, and I'll cover that. So key point here is that it is a combination resume where you have to highlight, because many of you are in the transformation skills now, you're trying to showcase new skills that you're acquiring through the program. It's important to highlight what are the transferable skills, what are the emerging skills that you're bringing, and make sure that that is very highlighted. That means if you are applying for a job and these are the skills they're looking for, make sure the skills and with an evidence of what you've accomplished should be there as a second section after the summary. And after that, you talk about the work experience as a third section. Another important thing is that a lot of people write, this is a very, very important point, they write the summary section at the top, as a career objective. I want to become XYZ. Actually, reality, nobody cares about that. So what you need to write is that what you bring to the employer as a unique selling narrative. So write it in terms of, what are you bringing? I am so and so, I am this expertise with who have accomplished XYZ and can bring this, capable of doing this. So it should be a narrative that resonating to the employer or the hiring manager, not your career objective. Your career objective is something that is for you, because remember, this audience for this is recruiter or the hiring manager. So this is one of the commonly made mistakes. People write the career objective and that is not relevant in the top summary section. Next important practice, you have to describe the experience only with the results, as I showed a couple of examples, and state the metrics. And the important thing to avoid is that don't write the job description or responsibilities. This is very, very important. What you've accomplished and clear metrics and impact that you created is the only thing, needs to be mentioned as a set of bullets. For example, I'll just go over a few examples. Some of the work experience could be like this, right? Level up the growth strategy for a brand with the goal of increasing global revenue by 72%, or from revenue increasing from 29 billion to 50 million within 2 years. So clearly an accomplishment, this person implemented the growth strategy for a brand, increased the revenue, and clearly showing the metric and how this metric was achieved in what time period. Right? There might have been a lot of job responsibilities behind that, but what is important to call out, it's an accomplishment result that carries a metric. Similarly, implemented a referral system. How did it impact? Resulted in this so many million additional revenue, increase in new business within the local retail division. Successfully revamped the company, website is a task that was accomplished, but how did it impact? Increase 35% increase in pages per day, and talk about all the metrics, right? Similarly, if you did some process related accomplishment, how did the process improvement resulted in? Clear metric. So every accomplishment, what was achieved and what the metric, and tie it to the skill in the skill summary section. The other important thing is to remember is that use some strong verbs to write results, right? When you write this accomplishment, you talk about, I led this initiative, I led this development, led this engineering team, drove this process, drove this initiative, developed, implemented, delivered, doubled the revenue, increased the revenue, expanded the scope of the process, to talk about a lot of, use a lot of the strong verbs to write the results so that it makes it very powerful, for someone to read the accomplishment. As we described, every skill, this is a simple formula you can use. Action plus results and outcome that was created equal to skill. So if you're describing a particular skill, for example, you are maybe describing a go-to-market skill. Here is what I accomplished and here are the results achieved. And that's how you show an evidence of the skill. And do not write job description once again, right? Are you with me so far? So it's very important to understand a resume having a summary section, a skill summary with the evidence of the accomplishment, and pick top 3 accomplishments in your resume, in your profile, and then go over the reverse chronological summary of each job with accomplishments, with the results. And for better readability, it's important to, as you saw in some of the examples that I showed, make the resumes bulleted once so that, and you'll also get a lot of white spaces so that the resume doesn't become crowded with too many words, instead of writing paragraph sentences. So make it a resume bulleted once so that for better readability. And typical font size should be 10. And use only professional fonts, either Arial or Times Roman. And wherever you need to really strategically highlight something that needs to be catching the attention, for example, some metric that you want to highlight, some important fonts that you want to, use the bold or italic. So don't, so use it, carefully in the resume. When you talk about education, right? And normally we will say, I did B in computer science, but if you include a little bit coursework, what they really accomplished, for example, here is a simple example: B in computer science, technology, and minor in psychology. You can add this additional one. The coursework included persuasion, entrepreneurship, human-computer interaction, design, policy analysis, and really giving the reader a little bit more about what you've achieved in your course or the degree that and you can, and here this person also says a paper is available on my website, what was done, right? So fundamentally, as the recruiter or hiring manager reading the resume, you want to start building perceptions about you. You want them to think about you as somebody. Oh, this guy's got some research capabilities also. He's a psychology guy with the computer science. So you want to start having them remember you. And these are some of the important areas where you can start highlighting things. At the end of the day, the resume is all about how do you control the perception of what they are thinking of you so that they remember you to call. or remembering to pick up the phone to call. And that's really the resume words used in the resume. What you write in the resume should make them think. It's fundamentally all about controlling the perception about you. And this is where it's important, right? You always write the resume in a persuasive language, just like we see advertisements, right? The ad copy, what you see when you get an email, what is the title that you get? What are the words that are used? It's the same thing applies here also. Here you have to use the words and content so that the recruiter, you're able to think about you and remember you to call. And some of this I will, you also need to address in the cover letter that I'll talk about. But key is, as I said in the beginning, that this is a document, a marketing document. That means just like when we market the product, we think about what you want to put in the advertisement. Similar thing is absolutely necessary here also when you're branding yourself. So that's why, it's very important to use the persuasive language. For example, the previous example that we talked about, right? Develop the growth strategy with the goal of increasing, clear metric, clearly persuasion. Similarly, when you are going into an education, clearly, you're writing some specific things, you're raising the curiosity. So you start marketing yourself wherever they need to know that, okay, here is what I am, here is what I can bring to the table. Here is why I'm the right fit for this job. And that unique selling proposition, to achieve that, what language that you use is what you focus on. So that's why the resume document cannot be just a set of boring facts. So talk about make the connection, like the other example that we saw, the business development, he's now making the connection. Now I can now increase your bottom line in so many months because I bring this new approach. Make the connection. And this is another important point. So wherever you have, as I said, you talk about the skill that you want to highlight and show the accomplishment with a clear metric. And if you've got additional credibility markers, for example, you may have gotten some certification, or you may have gotten some award for the product, might have won an award, or you might have come from the reputed education institute, owning that skill. Talk about all that. So include that. So those are the additional details you will include in the resume to make sure that you're creating an evidence for the skill that you are bringing to the table. And as you know, many of you know that a lot of the recruiters use some standard tools in their initial resume screening, right? So make sure that you look at the job description, a lot of the keywords, make sure that you have a lot of keywords in your resume so that, for example, product management or project management, or if you're describing certain skills, particular, language skills, or it could be technical skills, look for a lot of keywords that you want to highlight. And so that in the initial tools, when they do the screening, with the job description, so your resume can get filtered before it gets to the scan. And last best practice, this is once you write the resume, this is very, very important. All of you know this. Normally, you send the resume, you don't want to write, please find there XYZ. Something is required, a cover letter, writing a simple narrative why you are right fit for the role, and write a simple paragraph that really catches the attention. And these days, we are seeing that, people also go to the extent of writing a video cover letter. Think of it like, tell me about yourself. Just like for a product, you build a personal explainer video, you write your explainer video for yourself, right? And put it in. And typically this is called tell me about yourself. And I have included some pointers in the resources. You can go through that, how to write a cover letter or how to create a, personal video. So when you send the resume, this cover letter makes a big difference. And the title of that email also, that's why it's like an ad copy. When you receive an email for an advertisement or an email campaign, whatever the title that you get, you have to first, make sure that the email will be even opened. And that's why, you think like, a typical ad copywriting, figure out the right words that you want to catch, right? Just like, even the mail that we sent out, right? Where, any career, how do you make sure that people will even open the mail? So the whatever words that you see at the top is very important. It's like, you get product, right? Hurry, this is going to expire. It's something, it has to be very eye-catching for you, somebody, for example, if you're writing to, sending a resume to some company, your title could be like, if you are somebody, you're going to make a difference, you can say that, here is how should LinkedIn or somebody, XYZ company can grow in the next 3 years. And then you're sending that, and then inside there is a story, hey, I have now come up with a story on what, XYZ, your company can do. Here is, take a look at the resume if you're interested. So you're just catching the attention of the person to even open your resume to see that, to see what you've written in the one pager, right? So you need something hook, and that's what the cover letter achieves. And make sure the cover letter you think like a real salesman or an advertiser, so that, so the resume has a chance of getting opened. So the traditional, normal way of please find attached, all that, this is the job I'm applying for. It has to be much more interesting, because if they get so many mails, how did your mail should stand out as something that they can open. Let me pause here for any quick questions before I go to the next section. Let me look at the chat if there are any. So to quickly summarize the best practices.
Hello, this is Catherine here. I had a question. How do you tie the metrics to your skill? Like, for example, if you are saying that this particular project has actually given a maybe $1 million savings to the company, I mean, what kind of skill would that be? I mean, typically most of us come from a project management or a technical engineering kind of background. So,
can you give me an example? I'll use this slide to talk about some of the skills here. Can you take one example? Let's just take a few minutes to go through that.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah, I was actually, it was more related to one of the projects that I had done, so that's why I was thinking the second one, the 0.48 million. That one.
Okay. So this person, here, if it is a referral system, this could be somebody, a technical person, who built a referral system using some web technologies. Okay. Mm-hmm. You could be a project manager who managed the building of this referral system, or it could be an engineering manager who delivered this referral system, right?
Yeah.
That is the competence. You implemented the system, but how did it impact the company? So that's where you talk about, you start understanding, what you develop will get an impact as a result of the project completion. So here it resulted in 0.4 million additional revenue, or 33% increase, and that the business actually gained because of your skill that you demonstrated in the project. It doesn't mean that you are the only reason that this happened, but your project had an accomplishment. Instead of saying, normal thing is that I was responsible for, as an engineering manager, implementing a referral system. That's just a job responsibility. Here you are demonstrating that you actually did if you are highlighting project management as a skill, your project management skill, what is the evidence? I managed a system, building a referral system that resulted in this metric. That means your project management resulted in this, output, impact being created.
So the skill would be like kind of project management or a technical lead system.
Any of them who made the contribution. So the point is, don't write the job responsibility. Don't just say I did this. Say what happened.
Yeah, yeah. That's right.
That's really the point we're trying to make.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
Because and that is important. Then you look at the new job. What is the transferable skill that I'm bringing? Therefore,
Mm.
it is. You're not just saying that I have engineering management, I have a go-to-marketing skill, I have agile planning skill. But what happened? Because I get the agile planning, I used, for example, it could be an agile planning. I improved the project, actually ran to completion, and increased the. You can put the corresponding metrics. The team velocity increased over the quarter to quarter because of my agile project management skill.
Yeah.
And the project was done 5 months ahead of schedule, or 10 weeks ahead of schedule. That created increased revenue for the company,
Okay.
right? So when a simple agile project management skill, I'm an agile project manager, I do XYZ, I do scrum meetings, I do all this. Those are all activities, job responsibility. But talk about what the impact that you created, and talk about metrics. The last one could be, in this example, somebody did some process improvement. I was in what did the process improvement resulted in, right? This is very important to highlight. So every one of them asked the question, what happened to the business? What happened to the company because I did this? And I think once you start asking that, you will know what impact you created and highlight that.
Okay.
And these are things people look for, hey, what is this person about, right? In the 7 second, 30 seconds, you have to catch. These are catchy metrics that you need to bring. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Any other questions on any of the best practices? Anybody want to share? All right. So, okay. So quickly summarize. A resume needs to be a 1-page at most. It can be 2-page if it really need to be, but stick to 1 page. And should have 3 important sections: a summary headline, 2-liner that says who you are, what you're bringing to the table; a skill summary, a functional skills with the clear evidence of pick the top 3 skills that you're bringing where you have done some top accomplishments with the clear metrics. Third section, work experience in a reverse chronological, bulleted points clearly, what accomplishment, what it led to in that period. And then education, awards, and end that section. So it's clearly 1 page, well formatted, bulleted, Times Roman, and highly written in a persuasive language. And send the resume with a very personalized cover letter that connects the dots to why they should open your resume, right? And make sure every word is scrubbed. Every word should be removed if if it is not making a difference to your narrative. All right. So now, having talked about what you do in the resume, let's also understand what are all some don'ts, what you don't want to, right? I don't want to go through it's a laundry list here, but some simple things, obviously, there cannot be a single spelling or grammatical error. So I think that's a no, clearly. And the other thing, this may look trivial, but an email address needs to be very professional. Some people, write some email that doesn't have the name. For example, if you are XYZ, Ravi Chandra, you say ravichandra@gmail.com. It's a name because at the end of the day, you want them to, when they're looking for an email, sending a response, you don't want them to be searching around trying to find your email address in the resume, because you make it remember. Because at the end of the day, once I read your resume, I remember you. That is the important thing as a recruiter. And so make sure don't use some email addresses that does not convey your name clearly. And obviously use a professional picture. Don't use any selfies. And document other than PDF is not recommended, because you don't want them to be getting a document that they cannot open it in some viewer. These are all some irritants that you want to avoid. I already mentioned about the, don't put any career objective or job responsibilities, not more than 2 pages. Don't put any details about compensation, and don't put something that will reveal your age. There's no reason to reveal your age, because they can find out later if they need to, right? Similarly, beginning and end dates of the employment dates are not required. Only month and year is enough. And don't use acronyms that or jargons that most people don't know and they cannot make out. And any personal details like citizenship, passport detail, this is something sometimes we generally find in resume, but all these are things, the mistakes to that you should avoid. Remember, any detail here, anything that will mean the automatic filtering out, and you don't want that in the 7-second first pass. Similarly, the other details already mentioned: avoid career objective, writing job responsibilities, resume more than 2 pages. Any hobbies or references, you want to avoid these details. And I'll quickly cover a couple of templates and resources then before we take further questions. So there is a document, and we've taken some of the document that this is actually a resume template that is pulled from. There are a lot of resume templates on the net which you can look at the resources, but here is something that I pulled. And you can actually pick the template that is, 1 pager, and that the most relevant one is, I'll show you this. Summary, skills, and the professional experience are the key sections, and use this from a formatting standpoint. And then, so these are some templates, good templates that you can leverage for your end. And there is an ordering link. There are many resume template, but this ordering link has a $4 price for that, because this is something that we cannot distribute. But I put the ordering link. But you can actually find there are other resources available that you don't have to pay also. But the key is to make sure that format and the page, 1 page is the most important thing, and you can fit that.
Will this presentation be shared with us?
Yes, we'll be sharing the presentation as well as the recorded video. We'll share that. Yeah. So you will get access to the document, the links, and everything.
If we prepare the resume, is there any way we can get reviewed by someone from IPL?
Yeah, so one of the things we are actually planning, the reason we are doing this masterclass is to share you the best practices, start working the resume, and we actually have planned a resume coaching review session during the career day, where you get to meet with the career coach, and some of us get some feedback, real feedback. So
okay, because this is Catherine from 2016B. So we heard before that IPL will help us build our resumes.
Correct. So that's the idea. That's the idea we're doing. So we want to first use this best practices and avoid things to avoid. Create the resume and then bring it to us and bring it to the career day where you can get the feedback and reviews. Because
career day, what happens? That is the opportunity for us to showcase our talents to an external faculty. So if we get a chance to review this before that event, that would be great.
We will do the best we can, Catherine, because we will be asking you to send the resume to us in a week or so that we'll at least start having the updated resume. But we can get quick feedback to you, and then we also, I'm just saying that at the career day, you also get to meet with the career coach, where you actually get to review and discuss your career objectives and how it connects, etc. Right?
Okay.
And it will be a continuous document that can be refined to make sure that, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that resume, LinkedIn profile, tell me about yourself, video, all of these are ready. And about how to network, interviewing skills. We're going to start thinking about many of the other career skills we want to create, so that every one of you have the best chance of, landing the job that you're dreaming about or desire. Right.
Okay,
So this is many set of things that we are following right now. Okay. And there are a lot of resources, videos, YouTube videos, and please go through that. We'll be sending this, but some of this is already covered in the deck. But these are some things, a few things like how to create an incredible cover letter. There are some more phrases that you want to avoid in your resume, and what are the persuasion techniques, So there are a lot of resources there. Make use of that so that you are able to come up with that one-page, awesome-looking marketing document for you as a personal branding exercise. All right, so that concludes the end of the pitch presentation. We'll spend a few minutes going over any specific questions any of you have. Can anybody share the personal experience?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Satish here.
Hi, Satish.
Yeah, I'm from the 2017 E batch. So some of the experiences that I wanted to share, one of them is for the cover letter that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because there have been instances when, because it's been, I've had several experiences, been trying for a job in the past year. So I've heard the HR tell me that cover letter is something that normally doesn't get noticed when you already have a job description, and if you and they shortlisted you from if the shortlisting has already happened, the significance of the cover letter is very less, and then the recommendation from the HR was to rather avoid having a cover letter.
Yeah, so there's a lot of contextual, all of this needs to be applied, right? So here the context that I was referring to was that you're sending a cold email to somebody. They don't know you, and you want the mail to be, your resume to be open, right?
Okay.
What is the catchy title, and and when they read the first two lines, a catchy title, the first A that make them open the email in the first place. After they open, they have few seconds in the first two lines. What should attract them for them to read, and that will make them even open the resume. What's the story should be compelling. That's when the cover letter is. It's not a regular cover letter. Please find attached here so and so. I'm applying for the job.
Right.
So I'm talking about a cold email that you're sending, and you want somebody to open and pick up the phone and call you in the next 5 minutes or whenever they're ready. Right. So apply this contextually.
Okay. Yeah, I think it is contextual. So I think I was referring it to it. I was referring to my experience in a different context. So I think in the context that you are mentioning, I think it is. I think that's going to be the most challenging part, because the resume is something that we're all used to doing. I think building that cover letter, the way you were saying, the personalized cover letter, sometimes it could be a video. I think that's going to be, I feel, the challenging part for most of us, if we have to be building the cover letter. That's where we need a lot of, or at least a good amount of coaching.
Correct. And I've included some resource pointers on that. There is a lot of, but we will cover that in our coaching thing also. But that's why, a lot of the techniques that you're learning in our class also, presentations and, executive presence, all of this, these are skills that we are creating, for you to ultimately, not just look at it from a product standpoint. You're going to use many of the skills, but you also need to use some of that for your personal branding also, right? Who is Satish? We need a 60-second explainer video that you can put on, an email link, or you can, or any portal that you're, going to have your profile put, right? Somebody should see that, right? And if you are having your own website, for example, who am I? So people should quickly make out. And that's where, all of the skills that you're learning, you will bring it together to create that more, a simple story.
And extending the question a little further, when you're saying that we should have a personalized cover letter, I mean, I also think that if you are applying to different organizations, so which means that it is going to be customized as well to that particular organization. I think you mentioned that as to what they're doing.
Yes.
So which means that you actually need to have different cover letters for different organizations.
Absolutely, because cover letter is the role that is specific to that particular role, why you are the right person for that, and that story you need to come up with, and that's what you put in the cover letter. And if they and here's somebody, who am I, and that can be maybe a common. If you have a common explainer video, who am I?
Okay.
Can be common, but it's attached with this specific. For example, you may be applying to an Amazon role or a SAP role. In each one, what do they need to see? That means you have understood their job, their business context, and you're able to map it for them, how your skills is going to help them. So you're already making the connection. Remember, you're saving a lot of their work that they need to do. What is the biggest problem for a hiring manager? You and I hire all the time, right? Finding the right person. And the amount of searching we need to do, and this cover letter and all these are ways to simplify that job. Writing a simple, effective resume that I can catch your story in 30 seconds is simplifying my job. That means you're getting my attention as a recruiter.
Okay. So which means that if you're targeting, say, IBM, Amazon, and SAP as just an example, so which means that you're going to have a common video about yourself, and what you bring to the table for IBM is going to be a separate a video, and then for Amazon, is that how it's going to work for Career Day?
One, I could even extend it, saying that even a resume, sometimes you may have 5 skills. Let's just take an example. Satish has 5 skills, but only 3 of them are relevant to the IBM role. Skill 1, 3, and 4 are relevant to the IBM role. Where for the Amazon role, 2, 4, 5 are relevant, right, out of your 5 skills. So in your skills section, you will have a separate resume created to highlight those things and those accomplishments that they are relevant to them. Which means you're even taking one more step, helping their connection, making the connection. So you may even have a different resume for a different role. One of them could be a sales business development analyst role you may be applying, where these skills are important. Whereas for that role, that skills are important. That means you customize even the resume and write to 2 different copies for the 2 different roles that you're going to apply.
Okay.
And that is when people talk about, customizing the resume. Remember, it's like no different than a marketing campaign, right? You're sending a product to this customer group, you will have one type of advertisement. Whereas when you're sending it to another type of customers who are consuming the product in a different way, you will have a different type of advertisement. Same thing applies to your resume also. That's why we call it a marketing document.
Right.
So always think from that perspective. I think that is what we want to make sure. The thinking behind the resume is the most important thing. I want all of us to catch this. What do you need to be thinking? When you write the resume, it's not just the raw facts of what you have, what you are, what have you done. And that's where the whole thing makes it. Because the problem with the resume is that you only get a phone call if it is successful. You never get to know why you don't get the phone call. Right? And it's always a mystery. And that's the problem we are trying to solve. All of us are faced in different times, right? Make sense, Satish?
Yes. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Any other questions? I mean, those are good, examples, experiences to talk about. Yeah.
Ramanan, Manjunath here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Manjuna, I can hear you.
Yeah. So first off, these are excellent tips. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
The question that I had was related to LinkedIn profile versus a professional resume, right? So we all remember, especially in the 2017 batch, one of the things that I remember Pinkesh saying earlier was that resume-based hiring will become obsolete soon, especially for these product leadership and senior type roles, right? So assuming a platform like LinkedIn will become the de facto standard, for people to showcase, prove their worth and fitment using, the demonstrable assets. How does the practices, the tips, all that they've shared so far transfer over to a professional profile management platform or tool like LinkedIn?
A good question. In fact, there is going to be a next follow-on topic on this, how to build a good LinkedIn profile. We're going to be putting together from the career management cell. But many of the things that I talked about directly applies when you write the experience section. What you write, simple bullet, and and what you write in the summary section is the simple narrative that you want to bring. So those things directly, these best practices carry over to the LinkedIn profile. The LinkedIn profile, additional things you will have to add to this, the recommendation piece, and obviously, a few other, the connections, and the additional fields the LinkedIn profile has got. But fundamentally, the core part of summary narrative and how you call out the experience, all of the whatever I talked about directly apply. Because at the end of the day, you want to call out your skills, accomplishments, metrics, all that, the language needs to be, exactly simpler. And again, people don't read big paragraphs in the LinkedIn resume also. And the keywords, all those are important. Because LinkedIn uses the skills, keywords, there's a lot of analytics, happening behind the LinkedIn, right? So many of this thing, but there are additional few more things that needs to be added to this, so we're going to we'll come up with a follow-on masterclass that talked about how to build an awesome LinkedIn profile.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Yeah, I had a question related to that. How much important do you think are the endorsements and the recommendations that are there on LinkedIn?
I cannot comment on the endorsements much, but I've not found it much value. But I've seen that I've heard people, the recommendations from, a manager or people who have consumed, that carries some weight. People who have really used it. And people can make out whether the recommendation is genuine or not by looking at the text. But the endorsements is something that I'm not too a fan of that, because it's like I endorse you, you endorse me, so it looks like there is a lot of.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Hi Ramanan, this is Vinay from 15A.
Hi Vinay.
Yeah, Ramanan, there was one point which was mentioning to not mention the dates, start and end dates of the role which we had executed, and then other than a year. I didn't really got what does that other than a year mean, Ramanan, if you can explain a little further.
Yeah, so what I meant is that, see, don't want to mention March 10th to March, I did August 25th, this experience. So just keep it at the year and month level, that should be enough. Don't mention the beginning date, because sometimes there might be a gap between the experience. So you don't want to replace things. Get a chance to sending a minimum detail that is not necessary, does not need to belong in the resume.
Okay, I think a little your sound was a little breaking, so let me acknowledge what you have mentioned.
Yeah, I can hear
So
you.
is that just a year is good enough? You don't have to even mention a day, a month as well.
No, I said month and day, year is fine, but don't mention the specific dates and all that.
Got it, got it. But in case if I am mentioning reverse chronological order, and if I had to mention the latest three as the three roles which I played, I do have to mention the month and year for each of them, right? Not necessarily just the latest one.
Yeah, no, for each one of them. Yeah, so that is needed for everyone. It's just that don't go into the exact dates, and all that details are not necessary.
Understood, understood. Thanks, Ramana.
Other questions or experiences to share?
I just had one last one. The things that we've done for product labs, that we can also highlight it in the skill section, right?
Correct.
Yeah, or define it as something that we've done as part of the coursework.
Correct. And these are things additionally we talk about in the LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn now has additional thing called portfolio.
Okay.
So that you will start building the portfolio in the LinkedIn, where you can actually see your artifacts, assets that you're producing, which could be a slide output or a YouTube output, something you don't get to mention in the resume. So those are additional. LinkedIn profile carries the additional value because you're able to showcase your work.
Yeah.
And Satish here, I just thought of sharing maybe a personal learning from my end.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I started looking for a job, I mean, it was like say a year ago. When it comes to these achievements that you mentioned as one of the best practices, is to mention quantify it again, inform the metrics and all that. Now, that was something I had an inhibition to put for a few reasons. One was I thought I am sharing information which would be confidential because it's coming from my previous work. So that was one inhibition I had. And the other inhibition was, I think, is something that the other member as well pointed out, because initial part of my career, it was not it was part of the teamwork. It was more of the engineering work, and how would you account for the business win or the revenue that you generate, because that is not your responsibility as your function as an engineering team. And then as I progress in the career, I've moved towards business roles, and I saw that it was easier to actually relate to those numbers. But at the end of the day, my resume started to look like, even at the engineering work that I did, I started to mention that overall this is what we achieved as a team, and this is what we did as an engineering team. And the confidentiality part, I think I did manage to, because I saw that others were also doing it, and I understood how they're doing it. So they don't take names, they just take numbers, and then they refer to the companies as top 3 or leading, and so that's the kind of thing which at least I went through as a discovery or a learning, because initially I had these inhibitions of the mindset that I shouldn't be sharing these kind of information because I'm already mentioning my prior experiences over there, and I'm giving away information when I am taking interviews. So I think that was a thought process I had initially, but I saw that I don't think it really matters. At the end of the day, if you're not too specific, I think it is good help in branding yourself.
Yeah, I think you touched on 2 points. Let me build on that also. One is about the confidentiality when you write the metrics, right? Obviously, you have to pick the metrics that are contextual. You don't have to say, one way you can avoid this is that, if I can think of, you don't have to necessarily say that this innovation resulted in this absolute value of metric. You can talk about this created innovation in relative scale. This much percentage improved. The product revenue, this much percentage improved. You don't have to go into the detail, but you can talk in a relative term. That's one way to say that there's something happened, right? And each one you look at it based on the accomplishment and see how you want to show the impact, but not reveal the confidentiality, and what's the best way to you can bring across. That, I think, if you put the thought, you will come up with the right way to do that, right? And each one is a contextual, obviously. And the second point, I think, engineering versus business, whether you are an engineer at the lowest level or a project manager or individual contributor or a team lead or a manager, ultimately you all work within the project context that has a product context and a business context. What happened in that, because the project doesn't, at the end of the day, output of the project makes a difference to the business or the product. Quantifying that impact, making that connection will make sure that this is not this is something happened because of the skill that you demonstrated, right? So it doesn't have to mean that you have to be holding a business role today, because as I said, this is, you're not everyone understands that everything is a team effort. Nobody, it's not never an individual that creates all of this, right? But I did this, but something better happened because of what I did. You are a contributor to that, but it's understood that you are not the only contributor, right? So
Right. Yeah.
I think
So initially, I think it was more of the innovation that was stopping me from doing those things, but I think it was a learning which helped me get over those inhibitions, and then I was able to do it.
Good. Any other questions? I will also share the, we also want to continuously improve. So I sent you the feedback you can provide offline. I'll put it on the chat window. Simple feedback form and how about this masterclass. So we'll be coming up with more masterclasses. The continuous feedback will help us improve, do better things. Any other question? Hope this was useful. The idea was to basically, enable you with best practice. We'll start working the resume, because we'll be sending out the next steps as we get approach the career day.
Yes, it's been extremely useful, Raman, because although there are a lot of material on the net, these are like really, focused on what we really need to do. I really liked what you mentioned about just being a salesperson for yourself. That was a really good tip.
Yeah, so I think, so as long as we can think from that, it actually will focus on getting the right content in place, because it's important to get the connection made quickly with the hiring manager, get it discovered. That's all, is a must, right? All right, if there are no questions, I think please fill the feedback, and then we'll be sending the recording and the slides, in a separate email. Look forward to the further interactions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Good night, everybody.